Alright, welcome to today's lesson on computer systems. Before we start, we need to figure out what a computer actually is. So a computer is basically any device that is programmable. This means that it will accept input from a user, take that input and perform some operations on it, adding, subtracting, sorting, whatever. With those results, it then stores the information for later access and can also output the results for the user to see, either on a monitor or printed out or somewhere like that. Now the key word there was the word programmable. And what this means is that a computer can be given a set of instructions that can be acted upon. And those instructions can also be stored so they can be run over and over and over and over again. Now before we get any further, we need to discuss a couple of general terms that we need to understand for talking about computer systems. The first is the difference between a program and a piece of data. A program is a piece of information stored on a computer that is a sequence of instructions telling the computer how to complete a task. And oftentimes when you run a program, you have to provide additional piece of information, which is what we call data. This is the information that the user provides when the program is running so that it can complete whatever tasks that program is supposed to perform. The second pair of terms that we're going to look at are often confused by people who are creating computer programs. These are the terms programmer and user. A programmer is someone who's going to actually write the code to make a program run. They do not use the program, they just program it and create it for others to use. The user is the person who is going to use or run the program to make it perform a particular task. We also have a computer system being built up of both hardware and software. Hardware are all of the physical components of a computer. These are the ones that you were taking apart when you took apart the inside of a computer. The CPU, the RAM, the motherboard, the monitor, the keyboard, all those things are pieces of hardware. We can physically touch and hold them. Software is a program stored on a computer. Okay? These software programs can be transferred from machine to machine very easily on a USB drive or sent through the internet, whatever. Examples of this would be Microsoft Word or the Internet Explorer or Call of Duty, whatever. Anything that we're going to run on the computer. So now when we're actually going to run a program on a computer, we have to do what's called computer processing. And there's a very specific way that computers do this. They always go through the process of input data, process it in the CPU, store it in memory, and output results. The input in this case is any information given to a computer. There's two types of information recall from before. We have both the programs or instructions and the data used while those programs are running. The CPU, or central processing unit, is a chip inside the computer that is actually going to follow the instructions found in the program input. It's going to process and change the data which is provided through the input from the user. Memory in the computer is essentially stored information. We're going to use it to store either the program itself or the data that is being provided by the user or modified by the CPU. And finally, we have the output, which is all the information that comes out at the end after the program's finished being run. It could be printed on paper, which we call a hard copy, or it could be displayed on a monitor, which we call a soft copy. So here's the flow that we normally have when we're computer processing. We start with a piece of information being input into the computer or the CPU. The CPU then processes that information, storing it in memory or retrieving it from memory, and then outputs any results to the screen or to the printer or wherever it's going to print it to. The CPU itself is also broken down into two main parts: the control unit, or CU for short, and the arithmetic logic unit, or ALU for short. The control unit is the part of the CPU that follows the instructions given as input. So it takes the program and runs it line by line, step by step, doing what it's supposed to do. The arithmetic logic unit is actually going to be the part that performs any of the math operations. So whenever the control unit says that I need to add something, compare something, or do some sort of comparison with and, or, and not, it sends that information to the ALU, which performs the actual calculation. There's also a small amount of memory held within the ALU to help make those calculations run a little bit faster. This is called the accumulator. So if you make a look a little bit closer here, we have our input of our program going to the control unit. asks us what to do. We do any calculations of the logic unit, back to the control unit, maybe store some of that information in memory, back to the control unit. We're always going to be heading back to the control unit to get the next step in whatever program we're running. Okay? And anytime we're finished, we have our calculations completed, we can output that information to the screen. So an example here of a program might be something like, I want to add the numbers 3 and 5, and the next line of the program says now I want to output the result. So how do we do that? First, I would input the first instruction into the control unit. It says we want to add two numbers. So I get the input of the two numbers, 3 and 5, send them to the logic unit where it performs the calculation. 3 plus 5 is 8. It sends that result back to the control unit, which it stores in memory. The control unit then goes and gets the next step from our input while it says we're going to output our results. So we go back to the control unit, grab that number from our memory, and output it to the screen. That's it. That's all we need to know about computer processing. We'll see you in class tomorrow where we can talk about what we've learned.